So we are going to look at strategy selection, and these are the things that you have to take very seriously, because apart from the choice where we looked at the SFA, when you are selecting strategy, there are other things you should consider, like the impact of CSR and ethics. We should also look at the formal evaluation. We have to look at things like enforced choice, learning and experience, and where you can be said to be a learning organization. So the process of strategy evaluation provides an assessment of the suitability, feasibility, and acceptability of different strategies. Strategy proposals that are not suitable, not feasible, or not acceptable can be rejected. We said that earlier. This might still leave several different alternative strategies to consider. If so, the preferred strategies must be selected from the strategy options that are actually available. Okay, so we use the TOS analysis. You see in the TOS analysis, I told you it's a variation of the SWOT where we can use to also select strategies, right? Strategies that use our strengths to counter our weaknesses, use our strengths to counter our threats, use our strengths to take advantage of opportunities. Make sure threats do not become weaknesses. Okay, so these are some sort of strategies that we have using the TOS matrix. So formal evaluation. Where there is a free choice from several available strategies, the selection might be based on a formal evaluation and strategic evaluation of the expected returns and risks over the long term as well as the short term. So you have a choice to select from several available strategies, right? But you must do a formal financial evaluation with those techniques like ROC. It depends on what you are looking at, right? MPV, shareholder value added, economic value added. You can use all these models to check, right? And look at the expected risks and returns as in the long term as well as the short term as a formal way of evaluating the strategy you want to choose. So let's look at the enforced choice. Now, in some cases, management might take the view that they have no real choice and then they are forced, are you getting this? Or that they are forced to adopt a particular strategy. And this one, mostly enforced choices can happen in a fast-paced environment where you are forced to adopt a particular strategy, right? So the reasons for having to select an enforced strategy might be that a key stakeholder, such as a major shareholder, is insisting on a particular strategy, or every competitor has started doing the same thing. That's what I said earlier. So your competitive position, mostly in a fast-paced environment, everybody has started doing 4G, and you're a telecom company, you will be forced to adopt 4G. So, however, it is possibly a sign of weak management that a strategy is considered necessary or unavoidable. Strategy selection should be positive. So management should be looking for the strategies that are most likely to achieve the corporate objectives. Okay, so remember, if they ask you about enforced choice, you should know the circumstances under which you'll be required to make an enforced choice of a strategy. And let's look at learning and experience. Okay, so a distinction can be made in strategy selection between your experience and how you learn. Okay, so remember, before you select a strategy, sometimes you can select a strategy based on the experience you had acquired over time, right? Or you learn and acquire new ideas. So experience is acquired over time. With experience, an entity should develop skills and competencies. Okay, strategic opportunities should arise that enable the entity to use the skills and experience to develop its businesses. So using acquired skills to develop and grow is consistent with the logical incremental model of strategic management. So when we looked at the logical incremental model by Lane Bloom, we said that what? Based on your experience, you do small scale extensions of past policies, right? As new strategies. So what did I do last year? Maybe I'll tweak it a little or change it a little, right? So that is based on experience. Then we come to learning, which is the acquisition of new ideas. Now, an entity might select a strategy that forces it to learn something new. Okay, this might require a significant change in behavior as well as the entity skills. Although the learning process can be rapid, strategies based on new learning are likely to introduce change more suddenly. And this type of strategy might therefore be fairly risky because it's something new you have to implement. So we have to look at where you decide to learn, right? You want to select a strategy, and because of the adoption of that strategy, you have to learn. So what is the characteristic, or what do we expect from a learning organization? Okay, so an entity is more likely to sustain its competitive advantage if it is able to adapt and change ahead of its competitors. So being able to adapt, learn, change ahead of your competitors makes you a learning organization, right? So you learn, the adapting and changing is a process of learning, and this can help you sustain competitive advantage. So you remember, when we're looking at competitive advantage, I told you it's not only about creating the competitive advantage, but you have to sustain it. Why would you create something and not sustain it? You go back to square one, right? So a learning organization is actually an entity that recognizes the importance of employees in the process of its innovation and change. So to remain competitive, an organization needs elements of a learning organization. Now, according to Pedler, Burgoyne, and Boydell, they talk about the characteristics of a learning organization, okay? Now, I think the Learning Company, A Strategy for Sustainable Development is their book, okay? So the learning organization can be defined as an organization that facilitates the learning of all its members and continually transforms itself. So when you don't stop learning as an organization, you keep learning, right? Trying to adapt and change. You keep learning so that all your members will learn and continually transform themselves. You become a learning organization. That's according to Pedler, Burgoyne, and Boydell. And I told you something with ICA that mostly they like to use the names for the models, right? So be careful. Some of the names you have always, when you see a name, mostly unfamiliar names, just write them down and write something about that model, because they can tell you that talk about a learning organization according to Pedler, Burgoyne, and then Boydell. Okay. So an organization where people continually expand their capacity to create the results they truly desire, where new and expansive patterns of thinking are nurtured, where collective aspiration is set free, and where the people are continually learning to see the whole together, right? That's the whole vision of the company. Okay. Now, Pedler, Burgoyne, and Boydell identify the following characteristics also in a learning organization. So if an exam question is going to come, they are not going to ask you to define learning organization, or they are mostly going to ask you a question about the characteristics of a learning organization, or they can ask you to define learning organization according to Pedler, Burgoyne, and then Boydell for some 3 marks, and then this one will be 8 marks or 7 marks, right? Making 10. That's how the questions come. So don't ignore these theories. They are very, very important, okay? Or they might talk about the issue of learning within an organization in the case, and then later some theory questions or practical areas where you have to identify whether these characteristics are found within what the process. This is more of an implementation issue, right? But it is very important to learn to select appropriate strategies, or a strategy that was chosen, you learn from it, right? So Pedler, Burgoyne, and then Boydell identify the following characteristics in a learning organization. 1, a learning approach to strategy. Now, strategy development is based in experimentation and feedback. And learning from experimenting and testing is one thing that is the we can consider characteristic of a learning organization too. There's participative policy making. Now, all members of a learning organization have the opportunity to contribute to policy making as part of the learning process, okay? 3 is information. Now, using information not as a method of management control, but also as a resource for the entire organization to use. Then we have 4, which is formative accounting and control. Accounting systems are designed so that they assist learning. In particular, accounting systems provide information about how cash, the key resource, is generated and used. Okay. Also, with a learning organization, there's internal exchange. The concept of the internal customer is encouraged. Work done for someone else within the organization is work for an internal customer. An internal customer should be given the same consideration and customer care that will be given to an external customer. The needs of the internal customer should be recognized and satisfied. Okay, so you must remember this. So we have rewarding flexibility. Now, members of the organization should be encouraged to see the various rewards they get from doing their job, and not just money rewards, that is their pay, right? So there is also openness about why some individuals are paid more than others. You should make this clear to the people, right? So that they know that your reward system is flexible. They put in their all when they are working, so that people do not harbor jealousy, envy, and other things, right? It doesn't make, those things do not make people move ahead. So we have enabling structures. Structures within the organization, including management structures and physical structures, such as the layout of an office and its desks, should be seen as temporary arrangement. So the structure can be changed at any time in response to changing needs. We have boundary workers as environment scanners. So members of the organization who come into contact with the external environment, that's your sales response, your sales reps, your customer service staff, buyers, and so on, should pass on to others within the organization all the information they gather from the environment. Okay, that's one of the characteristics of what your being a learning organization. So we have intercompany learning. So the organization learns from other organizations, from example, through benchmarking. Okay, so you benchmark your performance against other organizations' performance. Then we have learning climate. Now, the organization has a learning culture. Members understand that a part of their task is to keep on improving their knowledge and to share their knowledge with other members of the organization. And the last characteristic is self-development opportunities for all. So resources and facilities for self-development are made available to all members of the company. So employees at all levels and ideally external stakeholders too. Okay, so this was the impact of ethics, culture, and forced choices being a learning organization. Okay, these things are very important in the selection of what strategy, mostly a formal evaluation or where you make enforced choices. You have to learn and adapt, right? So remember this, and I'll see you in the next section.